And welcome back to another episode of PA PoliChicks. And in this episode, we are as serious as a heart attack, and we're going to explain that. I'm Flora Pastorero.
I'm Nell McCormack-Abom, and you can see I'm wearing bright red because February is Women's Heart Health Month, and this is all about going red for women, becoming advocates for good, healthy heart activities, lifestyle, foods that we can eat, because you have to know that heart attack is the #1 killer of women. Stroke is number 3, and they're all tied to this vital organ that we have to keep healthy and strong. And we're going to talk about ways to do that.
We're going to talk about this, and we're focused on women because the symptoms and the signs of a heart attack and a stroke for a woman are very different than a man. And we need to highlight that and to talk about that and to focus on that, because I think a lot of women go, well, I didn't have this symptom. Well, it affects women differently than it affects men. And I think that women tend to not take the signs and the symptoms as seriously because they're not having those common things that we hear about all the time, the numbness in the arm and those types of things. It affects women differently. And that's what we want to talk about and focus on today.
I think so. I know my mother had a heart attack in her mid-60s, and it started with indigestion. And she was someone who frequently had kind of heartburn and things like that. So when she first reported it to my brother, who surprisingly was in med school at the time, he said, well, you know, are you having any other symptoms than that? And she said, no, it's just my usual, but maybe it feels a little bit more. And then sure enough, she had already had a heart attack. Well, we're pleased today to have with us Denise Rhodes, who's a certified registered nurse practitioner at Penn State Health's Heart and Vascular Institute. Denise, thank you so much for joining us. And this is really your specialization.
It is. I've worked in cardiology here at the medical center since 2007 and have been very active in the cardiology department as being a woman provider, a female provider who definitely attempts to raise awareness for all of these people that have heart disease, and unfortunately a big population of these people that we see come through my department are women.
Let's start with the very basics, Denise. Can you outline the symptoms of a heart attack that a man might experience, and then list the symptoms that a woman might experience?
Sure. So I think in your mind, when you're talking about a heart attack, the thing that always comes to my mind in a picture that we often use is a man who's clutching his left side of his chest, pain, pressure, and tightness in that left side of your chest, radiating into the shoulder and down into the arm. And I think you had mentioned that in tingling or numbness down the arm, shortness of breath, really sweaty or perspiring excessively. You may get nauseated and vomit, some lightheadedness. And then that feeling of heartburn or indigestion can be common. You hear people eating a lot of Tums, and it ends up that it indeed was cardiac symptoms. When you think of a woman, though, you rarely see the picture in demonstrating heart disease where they're clutching their left side of their chest. It doesn't mean that women can't have those symptoms, but some of the more common symptoms that women have, and Nell addressed one of them that her mom had, was pain and indigestion in her stomach. You can have unusual pain in your neck, up into your jaw, maybe the upper back. Get a lot of, and you think, is that muscle? But it just tends to come and go or kind of stay there uncomfortably. Your upper arms, which can be both your right and your left arm. It doesn't have to be into your just left arm. Women also experience often unexplained weakness or fatigue, where it starts limiting them to be able to complete their activities of daily living. I can't finish my walk that I typically have been able to do, or I'm running up the steps with, a suitcase, and I used to be able to do that all the time, and now I've got to stop. So that unexplained weakness or fatigue. Swelling in the lower legs or the ankles that seems persistent, may not be there in the morning, but by the end of the day, regularly, you feel that your shoes and your socks are very tight, can be a sign. And then there is an unusual one that it's an unexplained sense of anxiety or nervousness, just an uncomfortableness that you feel that there is just something not it's a miss, and you just know it innately. But you're saying I'm very anxious, I'm very nervous, I have a difficult time sitting still because I'm uncomfortable.
It's interesting you say that one, because I think afterwards, that's what my mother said when we were visiting her in the hospital. I still remember it. She said, I knew something was different. And of course, my brother was like, why didn't you say that? And she goes, well, because I just didn't think I would ever have a heart attack. And
Sure.
Isn't that true? Is that why women are at greater danger of dying of a heart attack? Because they wait so long to acknowledge that something is seriously wrong.
That's exactly right. There was a short video that was supported by American Heart Association a few years back, and I think it had Elizabeth Banks in it.
Oh,
and
sure.
she's a working mother who's getting ready for work, and she's trying to do all of these different things, getting lunches ready, getting the kids dressed, cleaning up the house, throwing a load of laundry in, and she has her business clothes on, and she keeps clutching her chest, and her young son hands her this card that was sitting there that showed the signs of a heart attack. She lays on the floor, and she turns, and she calls 911. They're coming, and she was like, can you give me 5 minutes? Because she scans the kitchen and sees how a mess it is.
Ain't nobody got time for that.
That's exactly right. And as women, that is exactly true, that we wait.
Yeah.
We defer. We take care of our kids first. We take care of our parents first. We take care of all of the other things, and the importance of taking care of us kind of falls to the wayside, and that's exactly what happens. 2/3 of the women who die suddenly have some sense of warning, but not a lot of warning signs that they typically pick up, and part of it is because we wait.
Well, I am so guilty of that, and I say it all the time. I don't have time to be sick. I don't have time for this. I don't have time to go to the doctor. Ain't nobody got time for that. You just don't have time for it because we have so many other things. I want to know, why are the symptoms so different in women versus men? Is this just a case of biology? I mean, you described some very, very different symptoms.
Sure. And I think part of it is innately men and women are different. We have the addition of our hormones that do play some part in the fact of how we display symptoms, which can be added to that. But it is the difference of a man and a woman. It is a difference. Men may have they're more prone to pay attention, I think, to the symptoms that happen, and we discount them so frequently that we attribute them to a lot of different things. And again, women can have, as we mentioned earlier, these same types. Some women, their very first symptom is outright sudden onset of left-sided chest pain. So it doesn't mean it can't happen, but often we go for some much longer time being worked up for a variety of other things rather than addressing from the get-go that, hey, you may have some heart disease here and we need to follow up. And I think part of that, and being in tune as your provider, is I need to know, let's seriously look at what your risk factors are, and is this something that I really need to focus in on?
Let's talk about risk factors, but before we do that, one of the things that always worries me, because there's both a history of heart disease in my family on both sides, but there's also a history on my father's side of stroke. And for me, I find that even more terrifying, the idea of having a stroke. And we're also seeing younger women having strokes. I know a very good friend of ours, her 26-year-old at the time daughter had a stroke. Talk a little bit about the warning sign that you're having a stroke and the imperative to call 911 if you suspect that that's what it is.
Right. So they have built this mnemonic to help us kind of remember what are the symptoms that we need to be aware of. And initially when this mnemonic started, it was FAST, F-A-S-T. And since that first came out a few years ago, now we've added B, B-E, and then FAST. And the reason for that is each letter stands for one of the symptoms that we need to be aware of and thinking about. So B would be your balance. So if suddenly you're have difficulty maintaining your balance, can't walk down the hallway straight, bumping into things because you think you're walking a straight line and bumping, and it's not alcohol related.
Right.
So your balance changes. E is your eyes. So any type of change or loss of vision in one or both eyes, and it can be isolated to one eye.
Mm-hmm. And then face.
F is face, and so you're looking at you're looking at symmetry. So both sides of our face, in the big scheme of things, should look even. Is there a droop on one side or the other? Do you notice that the cheek is down? Does the eye look like it's drooping? Does the mouth look like it's drooping?
Okay.
A is arm. So if you extend both of your arms out in front of you or out to the side, does one of them drift down? We all should be able to maintain that we can put both of our arms up evenly or out to the side, and they should be equidistant and able to hold them up at the same height. If you're having difficulty raising an arm or difficulty once you get the arm up that you can't keep it up, that would be a concern.
Mm-hmm.
The S is speech. And so speech is where we notice that our speech maybe is garbled. It's, you notice slurring, or the fact that word finding. So things are, they're in mid-sentence and then they have difficulty moving on to continue the sentence or can't think of the words to move on. And then T is time, not a symptom, but the fact that it's emphasizing that all of these things, if there is any change at all, calling 911 and getting to an evaluation is most important.
And let me ask you this, is it usually not subtle? Like those symptoms you just said, is it usually someone who knows you is right away going to go, wow, there's something wrong with you?
Exactly. And that's what the anticipation would be. It doesn't mean that there aren't some instances where things could be more subtle, but in general, these are things that have changed acutely.
I got to tell you something and relate to something that personally happened to me a couple of years ago. I experienced the B and the E, and I was terrified. I lost my balance. I went to get out of bed, and I literally fell over, and then I was experiencing the E, and the E stood for, again,
your eyes.
Your eyes. My eyes, I couldn't focus. And I was home alone, and I was terrified, and I thought I was having a stroke because I remembered reading that, and I thought to myself, I'm going to have a stroke, and I'm going to be found, how long am I going to be here?
Was it just vertigo, or what was it?
What it was something completely different that I later found out. The crystal in my ears were out of balance.
I had that happen as well.
Yes.
Sure.
And it sparked the exact same symptoms, the B and E, of having a stroke.
It's
and I had
horrible,
read that
isn't it?
somewhere, and I was terrified because I was home alone, and I couldn't get to the phone. I kept falling over. I couldn't walk straight, and I couldn't focus on anything, and the room was spinning. And I'm thinking, oh my God, I'm having a stroke. What am I going to do? So sometimes it's not necessarily a stroke. This related to the crystals in my ears. We had talked about the risk factors for having a heart attack. What are the risk factors for a woman? What do they need to know about?
So we typically we separate out risk factors as things that are modifiable and things that are not. And the three outright that we know we can't change are our family history. So whether your mother, your father, or a sibling or grandparents on either side have had a heart attack previously, a stroke, or any kind of heart disease diagnosed, we can't change that. Age. Unfortunately, as we age, we're at greater risk for having an event. And then gender. Regardless of the level of modification, innately we can't change our gender. Those are three things that we can't change. So things that we can work on and change: controlling our blood pressure, controlling our cholesterol levels, tobacco use and its exposure, physical inactivity, our weight, diabetes, and having your blood sugar controlled. And that goes along with then your diet and nutrition status. Those are things that, we have control over. And then stress. And it's easy, and I often, when I talk to women
I'm
Here
wearing
in the-
red. I'm stressed out all the time. That's women.
Exactly.
That's
wake up
motherhood.
stressed out.
That's wifehood. That's workinghood.
Well, when I look at, so if you've marked all these off, then I'm going to make you an appointment. But no.
No.
When you say stress and you try and tell people, and you sometimes as a provider, I'm the outside person looking in and meeting people and talking to them. And when you listen to what's going on in their life, you're like, oh my goodness, that's stress. And it's always easy for someone to say, oh, it's how you respond to the stress. We all have stress, but it's how you respond to it. Well, I'm a stressed person as well. And I try and exercise, and I try and do things that are meditative and try and keep in control. But it is truly how you respond to the stress in your own body is huge as far as trying to control that risk factor.
And the other thing is, when you say physical
Namaste.
activity, you're not talking about running a marathon. It's like 30
Correct.
minutes, how many times a week?
Walking,
Yeah,
we
that's the
try and
best.
say most days a week. So if you can go every other day and try and get a walk in of 30 minutes, you're doing good activity. With older women, when they come in and they say, well, I can't go out and walk now with the weather the way it is, where do we send people to walk? Well, we used to have our mall open. That's a great place still. I did notice over at Capital City, they still have mall walkers in the morning over there. I also give people encourage them to, once they're diagnosed with heart disease, one of the places, when you go to the grocery store, when you go to Target, take the cart and do a lap around the exterior aisles before you do any of your shopping, and get a lap in. And then do your shopping and then do a lap once you've finished, just to get extra steps in and demonstrate to people that it doesn't have to be the gym membership and the intense boot camp workout 3 times a week. We can be physically active every day.
And you can really just go for a walk around your neighborhood too. Even in the cold weather, hey, I put 3 layers on and I still go out. So
I know. It's true.
Yep, it is. And depending, and I said I see a variety of people of different ages, so I try and modify for pending, there are a lot of people who the risk of going out when it's extremely cold, or if it's in inclement weather, I don't want them falling and then we have a fractured leg or something as well. So we try and come up with other ways to be able to fit that in.
Denise, I know both Penn State Health's website has lots of heart-healthy ideas for what you can eat, diet, exercise. The biggest thing, stop smoking. If you're smoking right now, stop. If you see a woman this month wearing red, go red. Give them a virtual hug, but let them know you care about them and you want them to be heart healthy. We thank you so much for sharing your insights with us on PA PoliChicks.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Denise. And again, we've got to stress heart disease. Heart disease, that is the #1 killer of women, and we all have to support each other. Go out, ladies, get some exercise, watch what you eat, take care of yourselves. I'm sorry, I'm guilty of it. I'm guilty of it when I say all the time, I don't have time. I've got to make time to take care of myself. And if something doesn't feel right, go to the doctor, get it checked out.
Think about when you're on a plane, they teach you, take care of your kids afterwards. First, get that mask on yourself. Same thing. Take care of your heart. Let's all wear red this month and let the women in our lives know we care about you, we love you. And men, we love you too. Take care of your heart. Get to the doctor. Get a yearly checkup. That's it for PA PoliChicks. I'm Nell McCormack-Abom.
I'm Flora Pastorero. As always, we want to hear from you. We want to hear your comments, any ideas or topics you'd like us to talk about. Just send us an email, PaPoliChicks@PennWatch.org. Thanks for listening, and we will be back next week to chirp about another topic.